everybody. Welcome to Monday Morning Must-Knows. My name is Merlin Rothfeld, and here's a whole bunch of stuff to pay attention to for the upcoming trading week. Now, before I dive into that, let's talk about what happened on Wednesday. Wednesday, Jerome Powell and the FOMC, as expected, raised 25 basis points. But there was a very key change that happened, and I want you guys to be aware of that one and know that the future may be changing for rate hikes. At the meeting 2 meetings ago, Jerome Powell came out to the press conference and he said the committee anticipates that some additional policy firming may be appropriate. And of course, traders and investors and economists around the world are glued to what Jerome Powell says in that speech to get any clues as to where the economy may be headed. He made it a point on Wednesday to say that sentence has been removed from this statement, and this is what has replaced it. In determining the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate to return inflation to 2% over time, the committee will take into account certain factors. Okay, that's a fairly big change there because it does not imply that they're going to be raising. It says if they do, they're going to look at some data. And of course, we know the data, right? It's going to be unemployment, it's going to be GDP, and it's going to be inflation. Those three factors, and of course, we have some of that happening this week. So let's kick things off with none of the stuff I just talked about. We're going to talk about earnings to start. I know all the good stuff's gone. Your Apples, your Googles, your Amazons, your Microsofts, that's all been reported. However, there are some names that you might recognize, so let's kick things off. 1,902 companies to be precise reporting this week, so a lot of companies. On Monday, we kick things off with PayPal, Western Digital, Skyworks, and Devon Energy. Tuesday, you've got Cronus, which is a cannabis company, Duke Energy, Electronic Arts, Wynn, and Occidental Petroleum. Wednesday, you've got Disney, The Trade Desk, and Teva Pharmaceuticals. Thursday brings you another cannabis company, Aurora, ACB, and JD.com. And finally, on Friday, you've got Honda Motor Corp. Now, there's a ton of other international companies reporting earnings, so make sure that you check your earnings calendar just so you don't get caught off guard with something that reports earnings. As we've seen, there has been dramatic volatility, especially with bank earnings this quarter, so be very, very careful there. All right. Let's go back to what Jerome Powell was talking about, which is those certain factors he alluded to. What are they? Again, inflation, GDP, and unemployment. Lucky for us, we have some data in that area coming out this week. So let's start things off with inflation. Now, of course, inflation has been the big buzzword for everybody in the marketplace recently. Let's look at CPI. Consumer Price Index is one of the major measurements of inflation. On Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we're getting the latest reading for Consumer Price Index. You can see the previous number was 0.1 on the hard red edge over there. The current expectations are that's going to be 0.4. So they are expecting an increase in inflation month over month. So that's something to pay attention to there. But we also want to look at the PPI, Producer Price Index, which comes out the following day, Thursday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And notice that over the past 8 months or so, 5 of them have been below zero, showing a contraction, a reduction in inflation, meaning deflation in prices, which is a good sign. However, the expectation for this upcoming meeting is that we're going to see an increase of 0.3% on Producer Price Index. So that line should be above zero at the upcoming reading. That is the expectation at this point. Of course, anything can change, but it's one of those things that traders really don't want to see. The Fed has now said, hey, maybe we're going to pause at the next meeting, but now if this data does come out with higher expectations and start to increase, they may need to keep raising. So the dance is on, folks, going forward. Now, we have the U.S. Federal Reserve make their statement on Wednesday. We do have some other central banks around the world that are notable. So let's shift over and go across the pond to our neighbors, the United Kingdom. The Bank of England will be making a rate announcement going from 4.25% up to 4.5%. So a 25 basis point increase there for England. That's expected Thursday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys are trading the British pound, be careful there. Now, I thought it might be worthy to show you what's actually been happening with those rates. You know, going back into 2006, 7, and 8, rates were high, getting close to 6%, 5.75%. Then all of a sudden, in mid-2008, they just fell like a rock from 5% almost down to zero. Now, what's noteworthy here on the hard red edge, look how aggressively rates have been raised over in England, and the U.S. has been more aggressive. The U.S. is right now at 5.25, and the Bank of England is only at 4.25. But it's the magnitude of the increases that could have a big impact on the economy going forward. Now, right now, the expectations are that they are going to raise 25 basis points, and the UK does something a little bit different. They actually have MPC bank rate votes, which are 9 voting members, which say, I want to raise rates, to lower rates, or keep rates right where they're at. At the previous meeting, the MPC bank rate votes were 702, meaning 7 members said let's raise rates, no member said let's lower, and 2 members said let's pause. What will be interesting is not the rate announcement itself, because that's pretty much baked in at 25 basis points, but it will be the voting members. What do they think going forward? My guess is you'll see it go from like a 702 to maybe like a 405, where most voting members will vote to pause. And of course, a lot of that's going to be dependent on what happens out there in the US, but certainly some action for anybody trading that British pound and even global currencies because of all these rate announcements. That, my friends, is your Monday Morning Must-Knows. We'll see you next week.